So I have recently been getting back into the Wheel of Time books for the first time in a very long time, doing a reread. Right now I'm on New Spring and I'm going through the first three books ahead of season two's launch on Amazon so that I can better rant about and discuss the series. But I'm also doing a rewatch of season one and kind of nitpicking some of the things that I really disliked about the adaptation because while I initially thought that this was the worst adaptation I'd ever seen, Rings of Power took that and said, "Hold my beer." And so I'm coming back to Wheel of Time and kind of looking at what the show did and kind of analyzing some of the things they did wrong. Looking at, did they do any of the things right? Are there any saving graces? But one of the things that always bugged me was the fact that they didn't really explain Perrin's Wolf Brother connection. It was just kind of he has this weird connection, and they did it in a way during the show as a means of saying this could be evil because he might be, you know, with the Dark One, he might be corrupted. He might be the One, the Dragon Reborn. Of course, those of us who read the books know that that's not the case, but still, they put it forth that way in the show. And this article over at Screen Rant is actually really good because it talks about how they need to explain it properly, otherwise they're going to have a Game of Thrones problem. And I hadn't actually thought of this when I first sat and watched through the show the first time. And I said, wow, that's actually a really good analogy because one of the issues with the Game of Thrones show, as brilliant as that show was it kind of just threw the connection that the Starks had to their wolves to the wind with the direwolves because they have the ability to be inside their heads and not necessarily shapeshift, but I forget the terminology. I think it's described here in the article a little bit. Um, but to be able to bond with them, see through their eyes, put their spirits into the animal form and actually have that sort of magical connection with the animals. And it's more than that in the Wheel of Time. Perrin's connection to the wolves is way more intense, and he can do a lot more than just that. There's also all the manipulation of the dream realm and so much more. So we're going to be diving into this today. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfail. If you are new here, I'm sometimes known as Renfail, the bearded dwarven princess from the Rings of Power stuff. And if you like these kinds of videos, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get more of this because I do Wheel of Time, Rings of Power, Mondays in Middle Earth. We do House of the Dragon. We do Star Wars, all sorts of other fun stuff. So there's also video games and some other stuff, so stick around for all those things. In the meantime, let's just kind of dig into this a little bit more. Because the time they've given to examining and explaining Pippin's powers in the show to date has been very minimal. And the only reveal we got is that he is a wolf brother, which is unlike any other, as they say here, ordinary human in Robert Jordan's books. It said on a similar note here, Game of Thrones tiptoed around the Stark family's ties to their own direwolves, which extended just beyond just having them as mere pets or protectors. However, Wheel of Time must do a better job of explaining Perrin's connection with wolves than Game of Thrones over the Starks, and I full on agree. It says here that his appearance as a wolf brother in the first season of Wheel of Time is more nuanced than anything else. Excuse me. He's obviously got this connection. He's got some of their strength. We get a brief glimpse of his yellow eyes before he kills Aemon Valda. And these are all hints, but they don't really tell us any more than that in the show. And that's an unfortunate reality because if you read the books, if you've ever read the books, his wolf powers are way more than just a side thing. It's a major element of his character and the role that he plays in the overall story as one of the de facto main protagonists. It says here, too, his powers can easily be misinterpreted without having the context. And that's one of the issues that I took with the show is that the way they portrayed his wolf powers was sort of as a red herring kind of thing to deliberately throw you off the fact that, maybe he's one of the Dragonborn, maybe he's not one of the Dragonborn, you don't know, maybe they're evil, maybe they're not evil, you don't know. But they did it in such a way that it felt very heavy-handed in my mind instead of just coming out and saying, yeah, he has these really cool powers and that's what makes him special, as opposed to potentially making him evil. It says here the terminology in Game of Thrones is known as warging. I forgot about that. That's good that it tells you the terms. So in the books, Perrin's powers are described as him possessing the ability to communicate telepathically with the wolves. He has a sense of them for miles around. He's capable of seeing far distances, has a heightened sense of smell, and he can smell fear. Once his powers are awakened, his eyes remain yellow, not just like they show in the episode where it's just briefly, but it's a part of the entire character, and it's part of the struggle that he has with how he's portrayed and how other people see him, because those yellow eyes immediately distinguish him from other humans, and those people who know what that mean are immediately going to make judgment calls against his character, and they do throughout the books based on that simple fact. So if they don't do that in the show, it kind of, in my mind, undermines a lot of what made Perrin such a cool character, and they've kind of thrown that out the window with season one. So I don't know if maybe they're going to lean into that more in season two, which would be really, really cool if they did. I apologize. Been up since 3 o'clock. Lots of yawning here. His wolf brother powers also give him the ability to seamlessly enter, and I'm going to butcher this name, Tel Arandriod, the world of dreams, also known as the Wolf Dream. He befriends in the books a wolf named Hopper. Linked to his story in the book, they communicate with each other telepathically, and then there's a big storyline that happens between them as Hopper kind of teaches him how to use his powers. It also says in the books, in any case, Perrin's dreams are prophetic. We're not sure how that's going to be portrayed in the show. It says here that Wheel of Time can beat Game of Thrones warging, and I do agree with this if it's done properly. It was thrown out the window with season one. So the warging in Game of Thrones books, and I've read Game of Thrones, the published books that exist today. I've read them through once. I've not ever reread them, so it's been a long time since I read them. But as I remember, the warging was just the ability to sort of go inside the mind of the wolf and in some to some degree control it, but other times you're sort of like along for the ride and you can lose yourself in it. And it's similar to that in Wheel of Time. It says here each Stark sibling has the ability to warg or skin change, which allows them to inhabit the body and mind of their direwolf. The showrunners didn't actually show that because they were just basically giant wolves that were pets in the show. And they kind of stripped the magical element out of it, which was unfortunate. And I kind of feel like they're going a similar path here in the show version of Wheel of Time, because there's a magical element to the Wolf Brother component, but I feel like they're sort of throwing that out the window in favor of only focusing on the one power. And they've even stripped out the Satan versus Sadar component of the male versus, the male side of the source versus the female side of the source. They've even gotten rid of that, which I felt it undermined the story because they just kind of made it like they're just all men are going to go insane, but they didn't explain sort of why. And I feel like this is another one of those elements where they've kind of thrown this magical element of parents out the window, which brings into question whether or not they even going to have the dream world at play at all, because there's some really cool stuff that happens with Matt and the Horn in the books, and his story of the Horn is completely botched. Don't worry, we'll be covering Matt and his character in another episode, so don't worry. I'm not gonna abandon my favorite character Matt to the wind. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think that they were aiming at with season one? Because I'm a little bit confused and I need to rewatch it. I will be getting around to the rewatch soon to sort of refresh my memory. But especially going into season two, I just kind of want to wrap my head around what they think they're going to do with Perrin's abilities, because he is equally, I would say, he's what is it, Tavern? I always forget how to pronounce it, but he has this connection, this ability to manipulate things to a degree, and his wolf changing, not wolf changing, but the wolf connection that he has is a major plot element that makes him equally powerful to Rand in my mind, even though Rand ultimately becomes the Dragon Reborn and can wield, a lot of power. Still, it's food for thought. Anyway, if you got this far, you got to the end, you haven't already done so, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Hopefully, I've also earned your support by this point. I stay on the air because of people like this, so do me a favor, drop a super chat down there. If it's a premiere or a live stream, usually these premieres at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm here chatting away with you, so feel free to ask me questions down there. You can do super chats on these, and then after the fact, you can also join as a member. We have 3 different tiers, lots of cool stuff we do for our members, and there's a Patreon page for that fantastical world behind me, which is on the wall, which is what my wife and my brother and I work on in our day jobs. So stay tuned. Talk to you next time. Happy reading, everybody.